Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we're looking at Kislev's campaign mechanics. That's right, they're coming out thick and fast at the moment, which I appreciate, because it's nice actually seeing all this stuff, and it's nice to be able to have, you know, the previous ones fresh in your mind when the next blog comes out, which I really like. So, without further ado, let's have a look. So let your foes feel the fury of winter with Kislev's campaign mechanics. Once again, thank you Ben Barrett for the blog. So, welcome back to our series of articles on faction mechanics in Total War Warhammer 3. Today we're heading north to the icy lands of Kislev. I mean, it says we're heading north, heading to the northern part of the world, but that means that we are south of Kislev. As, you know, we're reading this, which we're nowhere there, because we don't live in Warhammer? Just saying. Anyway, the ward of the world against the machinations of chaos and humanity's finest line of defence against the threat of corruption, a fierce belief in their land, its people, and the power of their gods to stand against the chaos seeping from the north, whispering dark secrets and desires, crushing and infecting all those it encounters, keeps the nation alive. They have endured much, but they will continue until their mastery of the north is complete and chaos is driven from the wastes once and for all. So, you know, pretty righteous cause there, I think. You know, keeping chaos at bay, always worthwhile. Chaos, kind of wrong'uns, you know. The more I read about them, the more I don't think they're the good guys. So, devotion is their first campaign mechanic. If it hasn't been clear, Kislevites are a fairly religious sort. When you're freezing to death on your 50th day since you last saw your family, digging at the ice to get ever closer to literal demons, and make sure they aren't coming for your home, your people, and everything you hold dear, well, it helps to have something to believe in. In-game, devotion is a representation of how well your faction is upholding the ideals of Kislev, and how easily it can keep the passion of the common people focused on destroying chaos. As I said before, a good cause. So, it is gained primarily through exactly that, combating and destroying the armies of chaos. So this, I think, is, I mean, it makes sense thematically, and it keeps your focus on the sort of the real crux of the campaign. I find it can be annoying if a campaign just sort of goes, you know, sort of drags you in a million different directions, and you end up just like in some prolonged, like irritating distraction of a war against a faction that you really have no beef with personally, and you don't think your faction has any beef with, and whatever. So I think something that just keeps you focused, you know, against chaos, I think is a good thing. So hopefully a billion people won't declare war on you from all sides and just be in the way. But we'll see. We'll see. It is a sandbox at the end of the day. So, defeating chaos-aligned armies provides some, while sacrificing the captives post-battle gives another chunk. Various buildings and decisions can also generate devotion, the gods of Kislev responding to the attentions of their people. Should it dip too low, chaos armies may attack your homeland, finding it all the easier to manifest and invade a people who no longer believe they can be stopped. Devotion will drop when you commit heretical actions, like declaring war on other Kislev factions. So this I really like as well, because it's the idea of, oh, if it dips too low, they throw chaos armies at you. So there's two things there. One, it gives you some of that resource that then you can then use. But also, it gives you sort of like, it gives you like a minimum time between fighting chaos armies. So it keeps you focused on the main threat, and I really like that in any sandbox, where you just have a meter where it goes, okay, here is a threat, here is a challenge, you know, to your campaign, here is something that you have to react to. I really like that. It's the same with the Great Bastion for Cathay, has got, you know, chaos armies attacking it intermittently. These kind of things I think really help to have this like more apparent, like gaugeable threat that, you know, it feels like you're scouting, you know, you have some information on it, and you have something to plan involving that information. At the moment, with like a pure sandbox, you can just be sort of, you just have to plan for every inevitability, and you can't really focus on the things that you feel matter, because anyone can declare war on you at any point, right? So usually you just focus on who you're at war with at any one time, and everything else just isn't really considered until you get that pop-up saying, you know, so-and-so has declared war on you. But with these kind of mechanics, you always have that like looming danger of, oh well, soon this chaos army will be attacking. And so it just keeps you focused on more parts of your campaign, which I think is really good. You're not just reacting, you can actually plan in advance for certain things that you have some information to go on. So you're not just blindly planning, you're not just having an army camp for the hell of it, which I also find really kind of it's just a waste to just have an army sat there waiting for the inevitable. No, it's nice to know when that thing will inevitably happen. So more mechanics that do that, I think the better. It's like the Vortex campaign. Obviously, you do a ritual and you get attacked a bunch, which I think was nice, but I think that gives the player almost too much agency, because you can literally do whatever the hell you like. And then you can just sort of go, oh, you know what, I think I'll do that thing now, move everyone to position. You don't have that constant thing where you're having to go, ooh, can I push further? Or will that make the ritual harder? Can I, do I have to pull back now? Whatever. You can do it whenever you like, so it doesn't really matter. You have a bit too much power over that. It's almost like you're not fighting some big threat. It's that they just, you phone them up and say, hey, want to invade me? It's not quite the same. So I think they learned from that. It's nice to have these sort of intermittent fights happen, but it's better to have them sort of not something you have power over, at least not directly. You can offset it, but that's fun. That's a fun thing to juggle, to do things to try and delay it, because that way your actions have consequences rather than predominantly you say, I'm going to be invaded now, which is weird. You shouldn't have power over that. Made sense story-wise, but gameplay-wise, it was a bit boring. So anyway, that was a hell of a tangent, but you know me. So anyway, various buildings and decisions can also generate devotion. The gods of Kislev responding to the attentions of their people. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So I do like that you have either these intermittent armies that can help you get some more devotion, or you can just do it the old-fashioned way. But again, that's a choice you get to make. Choice is good, especially when it's meaningful. So I like it. I like it a lot. Should it dip too low, Chaos armies may attack your homeland, finding it all the easier to manifest and invade a people who no longer believe they can be stopped. Devotion will drop when you commit heretical actions like declaring war on Kislev factions. It can also be spent on buildings and technology that are closely aligned to the faith. These can be great places of worship, for example, or improvements to the invocations of people. The people of Kislev use to worship their gods. Speaking of which, the Motherland. It would be weird if they didn't have a mechanic based around their homeland, because as we've seen, the sort of Kislev as a nation is almost like a deity, like in and of itself. They have a belief in the land itself, and that does actually come to fruition with, the land creating a bear monster out of itself that'll swat people. The elemental bears are sort of that faith channeled through the land, personified, coming to help in their time of need. So it's very Warhammer. But yeah, it's good they've got a wider mechanic based on the Motherland, because it's an important facet of their culture and well, their devotion, right? So the primary use of devotion is to perform one of 4 rituals to the Motherland. These represent honouring one of the 4 main gods of the Kislevite faith. Their areas of worship, and the effects of the ritual are Salyak, who is basically Shalia, but the Kislev version. A god of healing and comfort, a teacher of common sense, but cannot bring back the dead. And that ritual is going to increase growth and replenishment rate faction-wide, which is very important. Another thing with Salyak, which I find really interesting, is whereas Shalia is also the god of healing and comfort, Salyak is also the god of mercy. So the idea of basically putting people out of their misery is something that has been absorbed into that kind of doctrine, because it's too horrible a place, it's too hostile a land to just sort of like drag people who are all but doomed and to doom everyone else. So there's a mercy aspect there, which is yeah, quite dark, but makes a lot of sense. And there would be, some kind god that would oversee that, because I think that makes everyone there feel a bit better, because you don't really want to be like, oh well, you've had your leg torn off by a troll or something. You might live, but it's unlikely, and we're going to be out here for another few months, so, hail Satan. No, that wouldn't quite work, would it? No, it's nice to be like, don't worry, there's someone nice who'll look after you. It doesn't feel as negative to do that, so, dark, but necessary in Warhammer. So, Daz, god of fire and the sun, legendary for giving knowledge of fire to ancient human war chiefs. So very, very cool. Daz, I think, I'd have to look it up, but to me that sounds slightly dwarven, and I would like to look into that a bit deeper. I'd like to know if there's going to be some references to this sort of thing, because the idea of the dwarfs being this sort of ancient race that obviously had knowledge of fire and things to give it to these people makes a lot of sense to me. So, but that's just a fan theory, I suppose. But yeah, God of Fire and the Sun, that's going to increase income and tradable buildings, which is rather nice. So, you know, some sort of idea of industry and having safe spaces for trade and things. Makes a lot of sense. So, Ursun, god of bears, and seen as a shepherd and protector of Kislev. So, very similar to Ulrich, you know, god of wolves, you know, very similar things, very similar doctrines and things associated with it. You know, warrior god, it's just their regional one. You tend to go with the regional warrior is the toughest animal in the, you know, in the area, right? So they've gone with Ursun. So, causes attrition to all enemies in your lands and provides a unique army ability that puts a powerful hex on a target area. I'd love to know what a hex is. I'd love to know what that is, but I'm assuming it's something to do with, you know, the chilling cold, you know, impacting their armies, because Ursun is very much the sort of patron deity of the land. It's very much, he sort of, you know, the land summons bears, right? You know, the elemental bear is a bear, and Ursun is the god of bears. Like, Ursun and Kislev go hand in hand a lot more. The other gods are just sort of like gods of that area, not of the area. Just imagine I'm stressing one thing over the other, and you kind of get what I mean, right? So, anyway, Ursun is more the personification of the land rather than a dweller of the place, right? So, or guardian of the place, I guess. So Thor, god of thunder and lightning and a mighty warrior who cracks the sky. Thor is Thor, right? You know, it's hardly cryptic. Give all armies additional melee attack and bestows a unique army ability to massively increase damage potential in an area for a time. So nice sort of, you know, damage buffs and things. Very fun. So it'd be interesting to see this stuff in action, see how the sort of the flavour that is added to this, because there's very little information on all these. You know, there's one, I mean, the odd novel, but really the main information comes from 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. There's just one book about Kislev, and there's just, you know, a little paragraph about each of the gods. There's not a huge amount, so it'd be nice to see if this game can sort of extrapolate from that, expand on it. You know, if you're doing a ritual, it'll have like a nice write-up of what's going on, the effects of it, and, you know, some cultural significance, and it'd be nice to see how much flavour they add, because there's so much information on the various gods of Warhammer, but these are one that don't have a lot, because it's not a faction that's really had a lot of, you know, love and attention yet, so I'd love to learn more about these guys. So it'd be very fun. So each ritual to the Motherland also causes a great winter to whip across Kislev lands, spread snow across any battles in the lands, and dissuade attacks from enemies. Should your devotion be enough, you can switch between or continue the effects at will. These great storms and rituals also serve to incite the populace to support your faction, which brings us to supporters and the spiritual conflict for Kislev. So this is where these rituals take place, and it's the effects that they sort of imbue, which is cool to see. So, I mean, you can see this fairly well, I'm sure, on screen. I'm not going to bring up a larger version of it. So it says at the top, invoke one of the gods of Kislev and bestow their blessing across the Motherland. So you can see how much devotion each of these rituals cost, and it gives you a little bit of flavour here. So the god of healing, comfort, Salyak teaches common sense and sound care, but will not save those. Okay, now I can't actually read that. Whose time has come. There we go. We'll not save those whose time has come, because when their time has come, their time has come. That's the mercy element. Whether that someone does that, you know, it's a decision that your time has come. She'll look after you. It's not perfect, but hey, it's she'll look after him. So supporters generated 1 when gaining a character rank, growth plus 20, and casualty replenishment rate plus 8%. So supporters generated. You're trying to create supporters here. So by choosing which sort of god you have a ritual in place for, that is going to change what allows you to get supporters, which we'll get to here. So Kislev is a nation divided. While it remains resolute against the coming of chaos, the death of the Red Tsar and the rise of his daughter Catherine to the throne has thrown the political landscape into disarray. There are 2 major factions, Tsarina Catherine and the Ice Court, standing opposed to Supreme Patriarch Kostaltin and the Great Orthodoxy. So magic versus religion, although they're kind of fairly blurred lines between those in Kislev. So the 2 dare not declare open war against one another, no matter their hatred for the other's position. It would simply be too costly for the nation, and civil war is already a reality on both their borders. So pretty grim stuff, but hopefully it can be resolved with some nice faction mechanics, you know? So however, they are gathering followers in the hope of proving that their faction is the greater and should be the one to lead Kislev, as one nation, into the future and against the forces of chaos. Gathering followers comes from any number of sources, further enhanced by which rituals you decide to undertake, and passive gains from certain buildings. So of course, if you're doing the Salyak ritual, then you'll get it every time a character gains a rank. So, very cool. So as a faction gains more followers, they will increase their relationship with the minor factions of Kislev, as well as proving to the people and the troops that they are the rightful leader. Should the vast majority of Kislevites choose one side of the other, over the other I suppose, or the other maybe, but whatever, it will become dominant, confederate their opponents, and reign supreme. Of course, both factions are more willing to spend gold or devotion to smear their opponents, so it's not just like proving you're the best, it's also making the others look bad, which I think is perfect. It's supposed to be a hostile thing, you know. I mean, the only reason civil war isn't happening is because, you know, you can't leave yourself wide open for chaos. That's it, right? It's necessity, but it doesn't mean they're not going to use dirty tricks. I think that's really fun. You know, it shows this sort of shrewd politicking side of Warhammer, which is very common, but rarely, rarely reflected in this sort of stuff. So really cool. I really like that. So yeah, you can use devotion to get supporters, or you can use coin to get supporters. So very cool stuff. So this is the spiritual conflict for the Motherland and its people. Whoever wins will still have chaos, the Empire and their vampire spawn to the south, ogres and worse to the west, it means east, by the way, that's a typo, and much, much more to deal with. So, Atamans and the great cities of Kislev. So, this is the final thing, I think. Nope, there is more. Wow, there's actually quite a few different mechanics, although I guess some play into each other, so, you know, whether you count devotion and what you spend devotion on, and like the supporters thing as separate or not is, you know, I guess that's up to you. But anyway, Kislev has a strict hierarchy of order within its society. And Atamans are what sit between the Tsarina and her people. They are the rulers of cities and regions, conducting the everyday business that keeps the nation ticking over and ensures chaos cannot get a foothold. In-game, they are special lords recruited to serve a province and can affect the income, growth control, and corruption of the area. They also have various special effects and can develop more as their career continues. They do not earn XP like traditional lords, but will face various dilemmas to increase their skills. A great way to add the politicking stuff. The idea that you've got this like war for the heart of the, well, not a real war, I guess a cold war, for the heart of the nation. And then you've got the various sort of, districts being run by these different people, and you will be getting events triggering to help make those decisions. I think is brilliant. That makes the world feel alive. It's great world building while you're playing, rather than just like, oh, just a bunch of dots on the map with names, being the cities. Now they come to life more because you're having to make decisions that affect, people, rather than just what do I build here? What lets me augment my army or whatever. It just makes it feel a little bit more alive. So this I love, and I hope we get more of this sort of stuff. I've been saying that every blog post we've read. I go, this is great and I want more of it. I know it's a good sign for for Warhammer 3. And hopefully they'll do some, retrofitting to older factions, but we'll see. So anyway, however, in times of dire need, or, well, whenever you like, really, Atamans can be drafted as lords to lead armies. This has no initial cost, as you already control the Ataman, though they lack the battle-specific random traits of normal lords, and they won't be providing their province benefits while they're in the field. If they die, they're gone, and a new one will need to be recruited to run that province. So I really like the idea that you have a sort of a garrison commander that you can get at a whim, but if he's focused on the defense of the area, then he obviously can't do the, the administration stuff. So I really like that. That's a nice trade-off. Do I quickly get an army that I don't have to pay for, or not? I say an army you don't have to pay for. It's just the one guy, but still, lords are quite expensive. So it's quite nice to have this sort of lord that can level up, thanks to their various events that you can just sort of call when you need to, which I think is really nice. I think it's a fun thing. It's nice because usually I can't think of an example where you have a lord that can be augmented outside of being fielded. You can't invest in someone that you recruit later. They're either leading an army or they essentially don't exist. which I think is a bit of a shame. It would be nice to see some more sort of influence you can have on people like on the subs bench to a degree, you know? So anyway, so you get 1 Ataman per 2 provinces you control. However, while for some races and areas of the world that would represent a half dozen settlements or more, the layout of Kislev is somewhat unique. 3 great cities dominate much of the landscape: Kislev, Prague and Leningrad. It has been many moons since the 3 were united under one banner, but together they represent the nation. The geography of the area also leads to some other massive single settlements, such as the Skaven Hell Pit to the north. Between these great areas are also scores of smaller towns and villages, scratching out a living and funding the war efforts with men, farms and weapons, which deserves the attention of the Atamans. Which deserves the attention of your Atamans is up to you. So this is an interesting one because it makes it sound like there's going to be lots of provinces entirely made up of minor settlements, or it could be that there's a city and then instead of the sort of maximum 3 minor settlements to the each major settlement, it could be that Kislev is unique in that it has like the city of Kislev and then like 5 or 6 or more towns sort of under its bailiwick, or it could be there are just like disparate other provinces that are just made up of minor settlements, which I think would be really interesting. It'd really mix things up. I think it'd be really cool. Real focus on keeping the big ones protected, but constantly having to sally forth to protect the weaker areas, and that is really Kislevy. That would be something that is the sort of the story being pushed by mechanics in a really nice way, because that's the whole thing. Kislev, they always sally out their lancers and their archers, their horse archers rather, to sort of harass enemy armies, let the land whittle them down, but you've got to finish them off with the cavalry, constantly on the move, trying to deal with these different threats and lead them in the wrong direction to keep them away from the sort of the vulnerable areas. And so if there are a bunch of vulnerable areas, then you're going to have to play like Kislev does war, and that's brilliant. So I really hope that really sort of that feeling is evoked by these mechanics, and it's not just a sort of for people like me to theorize that it might work. Hopefully it will actually evoke that. I certainly hope it does. It sounds really cool. So and yeah, having these Atamans to get little bonuses over different areas sounds good too, especially events driven. Events driven stuff is great. I love the choose your own adventure stuff, added into these games. It adds so much flavour for me. So, the Ice Court. The Ice Witches and Frost Maidens of Kislev are not simply born with their extraordinary powers and the wherewithal to use them. Dedicated training must be undertaken, and the costs and decisions related to that fall on your shoulders. Rather than simply hiring these lords and heroes, you must first pay for them to go through a training regimen. Which is super interesting, that it's essentially the colleges of magic are run by you. It's that kind of thing. It's not that they're just sort of, absorbed into the economy of the empire, right? It is specifically they are a part of like the Queen's retinue, essentially. The Ice Court is its own thing, that it's the leaders of the nation have to pay for it specifically, which I think is nice. It gives a different feeling of different structure. It's not run as this sort of autonomous thing in the same way that the the colleges of magic are. At least that's the impression that I get. So I like it. I think it's a fun twist on the whole recruiting wizards and stuff. It gives you a little bit more complexity to it. So here we can see, it says before a Kislev spellcaster can be recruited, they must be sent to the Ice Court for training. Here, each candidate will have the opportunity to acquire a number of character traits. A Maiden of the Ice Court is an envoy of the Tsarina, sent across the realm to serve Catherine's interests. She is also expected to stand on the battlefield, bolstering the warriors of Kislev with her magic. Where should she focus her talents? And it lets you actually choose how to level her, which is really interesting. Some really unique stuff going on here. So it lets you choose their quirks. At the cost of money, which is very cool. So let's get into that. So here you've got hero actions or battle, and one is quiet warrior and the other is magical warrior. So what all those things do, we can only guess right now, but yeah, you can see there are choices to be made. So the Ice Witches and Frost Maids of Kislev are not simply born. Sorry, I already read that. While this means hiring a new hero or lord takes many more turns, it also gives you opportunity to mould them into what you currently need. Each turn in training will give you decisions on how you would like to recruit, how would you like your new recruit to specialise? Which Lord of Magic, which abilities, which passive bonuses for troops under their command? Different technologies change the number of Ice Witches and Frost Maidens that can be trained at any one time, as well as the recruitment capacity for them. Once training is complete, they are added to your recruitment pool as normal, at a discounted price, as you have already paid for training. They can be recruited whenever you have the desire, money, and slots to do so. So that's nice, so you can bank a lot of different tailor-made lords and heroes, which I think is really interesting. It's a really unique mechanic, and it plays into what I was saying before. It's odd that you get to develop a character that you haven't already just, you know, that you're not fielding, basically. It's either leading an army or it doesn't exist. In this case, they exist. You know, you can build a rapport with someone, you know who that person is and how you built them, and you know what they've done to get there, which I think is really fun. So, you know, it feels like they've more proved themselves. I think there'll be more attachment to characters as a result of this, which is great. I mean, look at games like XCOM. You know, people love those games because they get attached to their squad mates and things. I think it should be the same with Warhammer. You know, you should get attached to your lords and heroes. I mean, I tend to, but this sort of thing, where you're really being told about them and what they're doing and, you know, sculpt them in such a way, I think that can only help with that attachment. So I think that's really good. I really love that. So, we already read that, didn't we? Yes. Naturally, Kislev does not adore that. If he is to wield the winds of magic in his armies, he must pay for training of those he despises. It's up to him, and therefore you, how much you do that, but the uneasy peace between the Ice Court and the Orthodoxy gives him access to the same tools as anyone else, which I think is great that they do that. I'm assuming that Zaldrina Catherine will have a bunch of, like, you know, if you pick her as your legendary lord, you'll get a bunch of faction bonuses for your different spellcasters and things, which Kislev won't have, but you still want spellcasters, and I think to go, oh, he's the religious one, so no magic, is just like too much of a nerf to a faction. I think that'd be really unfair and boring. Magic's fun. You don't want that taken away from anyone. So the fact that he could do it reluctantly, because, well, you know, greater good, right? You gotta fight off chaos, and you'll use what tools you can get access to. So the idea of this truce, they're not actually at war, remember, they're actually part of the same nation, even though they're at odds with each other. Yeah, you've still got that access, and I think that, again, is good flavour, and it gives the players as many tools as, you know, as they should have. You know, you want to give them as many options as possible, and you don't want to have a factioned unique thing be that they have missing stuff. That's just annoying, frankly. So, the tech tree. The tech tree, I am going to bring up a larger graphic so we can have a look at it, actually. But first we will we'll read the thing about it first. So finally, as we mentioned in our Cathay piece, we'll be detailing the tech trees of the individual factions, as each is subtly different and focused in a specific direction. For Kislev, their technology focuses on 4 key areas: the land and the 3 great cities. Each contains 3 groups of technologies, each of which requires a number from the group before to unlock. Within a group, several of the technologies may also be linked. To begin with, a few technologies in each set are available. Progressing along the land path simply needs a few from each box completed to unlock the next. However, the 3 tracks based around the great cities, Kislev, Prague, and Erengrad, require those cities to be in your faction. Each city focuses on different upgrades across the host of units, income types, and other benefits. As you can imagine, uniting all 3 cities under you gives a significant advantage in terms of what you can do and the power of your settlements and armies. It may provide some surprising results as well. So this I really like. I think this is really interesting because it's a way to use the tech tree to further sort of differentiate the different campaigns. Because, of course, it has mentioned there are 3 major cities in Kislev, but it did specifically say, oh, and there's Hellpit that's awfully big too. Which makes me think that one of the 2 legendary lords is going to start closer to Erengrad and maybe be able to absorb that, whereas the other one will probably Zaldrina Catherine, who's more concerned with, you know, it's an expedition for her, so she's probably heading north to deal with chaos rather than being at home, I guess. So, if that's the case, then she's probably going to capture Hellpit, right? That'll be her second big, like, major settlement that she takes. Potentially. I might be talking total crap, but to me it seems like they go, oh no, there's 4 big, real big places here, so enough to go around. That's what the impression I get. But if the tech tree is going to be divided like that, it might mean that one faction will have a big advantage in terms of what tech they have access to earlier, which is really interesting. So I'd love to see how the sort of the third settlement, the 3rd major city, sort of gets absorbed into whatever faction, you know, what events or diplomacy or what will impact that, or if it's a rebel, you know, held city or something. There's gonna be a lot of interesting stuff to see, like how the campaign dynamic will sort of work out. But it sounds interesting for sure. Really help differentiate those different campaigns, which is very cool. Something I really like to see. So yes, let's have a look at it. Give me a minute. Okay, so here's the tech tree. So at the top we have the land, so you can see there's 3 different chunks. There's this one, and this one behind me as well. So we've got cold storage, hooked axe blades, leather treatment, ice sculpting, which actually has a couple of little logos next to it, which to me looks like it's trying to say which associated gods there are, potentially, because you can see the lightning bolt, which makes me think, oh right, oh actually, now that I think about it, that's probably ice and tempest magic. Actually, it's probably the different magic rather than gods. But like I say, there's a hell of an overlap with you know, how the gods are represented, how the magic is represented. It's pretty much, the magic is arguably like the same powers that the gods are imbuing, which is really interesting. Because, you know, tempest, you've got the god of lightning, you know, and then you've got ice magic, you've got Urson. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting that there's such a, an overlap, which I find incredibly cool. And I think that's a lot of the point of contention between the legendary lords. But again, I'm getting distracted. So so I don't know if it's just saying that it's going to benefit those laws of magic or what. It seems weird to have specifically highlight those. So I don't know if that's a requirement. It's interesting to see, but maybe later laws of magic will have different bonuses, or maybe some tech will only help one law of magic and not the other, or something. We'll see. So Ice Court Indoctrination, Icecade Collars, Convalescence, Iron River Stone, Capital Barrack Renovation, Tsar Loyalty Right, Gospodar Bloodline, Improved Empire Relations, Festival of Urza. So we've got some cool stuff here. You can see that one actually takes devotion, which is interesting. So different requirements, which I like to see. But you can see Kislev, once you get 5 different techs, it then goes on to the next tree, which is cool. So you can sort of power level through to the end, but it does give you a lot of flexibility, this sort of tech tree, which I really like to see. Also behind me here, which I'll move this way, Gospodar Governance, Ursonite Cult Customs, Troll Country Pathfinder, Toughened Sanctions, Stanchions, not Sanctions. I was going to say, I think they spelled sanctions wrong. No, different word. Different word, Janet. Breach Loaders, Dwarfen Anvils, Ice Rites, Devotional Creed. There's some cool stuff, for sure. There's some nice sounding things. In fact, we haven't read them all yet. Orthodoxy Interdiction, Aggressive Cultivation, Mesh Layers, Imperial Efficiency, Kislevian Ducat, and Bear Baiting. So yeah, all kinds of interesting stuff there, but not a lot else to glean from the tech tree. It's pretty standard, except for the fact that, you know, how certain techs are locked is fairly unique, being behind sort of geographical locations rather than simply, you know, buildings or something. So pretty cool stuff. So, final paragraph. Be humanity's bulwark. I mean, I'll give it a go. Those are the basics for running Kislev. Little remains but to ride your bear to battle and defeat the hordes of chaos swarming from the north and out of the very chaos realms themselves. I mean, I'd love to, mate, but the game's not out yet. Don't have to rub it in. God, getting me all excited and then like, go! I can't. I'd love to go. I'd love to go and play. I'll have you know. But anyway, so Kislev sounds awesome. I really like the sound of it, and I really love how much... this is just a blanket statement for Warhammer 3 so far, to be honest. I love how much the lore of each faction is being reflected in the mechanics. It seems really good, and it seems to just be positive thing constantly. It's like, here's cool things you can do. It's rare that it's just going like, and you're going to get punished a bunch by a bunch of different things. It doesn't feel that way, because I prefer campaign mechanics that give you rewards that like encourage you to play a certain way, or you know, give you certain bonuses that are associated with that culture, rather than simply, you know, going, if you don't behave, we're going to punish you. It's like, no, don't do that. So it feels appropriate, and it feels like it's following my ideal design ethos. So I like it. I like it a lot. This is sounding really cool, and I'm very excited. I say this every time. I'm very excited. Each new blog makes me excited to play that faction. It's going to be very difficult to choose which one to play first, I think. But anyway, guys, if you've enjoyed this, please do comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.